So n8n is great for building automations and automating your business. However, I noticed that many people struggle with n8n when it comes connecting it to different applications and accessing data on the web, because unlike make.com or Zapier, it doesn't have a lot of native applications inside the n8n environment. Therefore, you have to use a lot of HTTP requests. So in today's video, my goal is to show you how you can easily use HTTP requests to access any data on the web, to access any API on the web, and connect it to any application, and not just show you how to set up the HTTPS node, but also show you how you can read the documentation, understand the documentation, and basically apply that knowledge to building advanced workflows for your business or for your clients. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. So the first thing that I actually wanted to show you is how can you, for example, scrape data with HTTP requests, because many people don't really realize that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add manual trigger, and I'm going to be triggering this workflow manually. And again, I'm going to add HTTP request as our first node. And let's see how, for example, you can very easily scrape data online with HTTP request and extract it. And later on, I will show you how you can actually access and connect APIs to other applications. So for this example, let's just choose a random website. For example, I know a company named carvertical.com. And what we can do right now is we selected the method get. So that means we're getting the data, we're retrieving the data from the web by accessing this URL. And at this moment, we don't have to set anything up. We don't have to set up authentications. We don't need to send any query parameters, headers, send body, nothing. So you don't have to worry about anything. For example, if you're doing simple data scraping. And now I'm gonna do is hit test step. And what now happens is that we're getting scraped data returned. So this is essentially returning us all of the scraped HTML from that particular website. Now, what I can do, for example, if I want to extract details, or if I want to summarize the website, or for example, I'm trying to analyze competitors, I could connect any LLM to it and say that I need an analysis done. So for example, what I can do is I can type in LLM, add basic and LLM chain. Over here, I'm just going to select the prompt defined below, and I'm going to say, summarize me this website. I'm going to turn it into an expression, and I'm going to drag this over here. Okay, like so. And then I'm going to connect a model. So in this case, we've scraped the website. So that means we received a lot of HTML data. There's going to be a lot of characters, and we need a model, LLM model, that basically can handle all of that data. So for this case, I'm going to select Gemini, and I'm going to select Gemini 1.5 Flash because this one is quick and it has, you know, a lot. It can receive a lot of tokens or a lot of characters and analyze that. So let's hit run. What's now doing is turning that scraped data into a summary of what that website is about. If I go here, I can see that this is the HTML source code for the homepage of Car Vertical, a website that provides vehicle history checks for cars and motorcycles. The site allows users to input vehicle identification number, VIN, to receive comprehensive report detailing the vehicle's history. So as you can see, with a simple prompt and with HTTP request, I was able to scrape a website data, and I can do that for any website that I want. So that's the first use case, and this one is incredible for HTTP requests because many people still are not sure how to scrape data, and this is how you can easily do that with a single HTTP request node by simply adding the URL, method get, and at this stage you don't need anything. So with this you can do competitor analysis, you know, targets, keyword, like you can analyze keywords, what are the frequent keywords in the website, what are the tone of voice, for example, if you're trying to write articles for these websites, and so on. So that's the first case of HTTP request. But now let's dig into how we can actually access other applications and API endpoints with HTTP request. So what I'm gonna do, I'm probably gonna move this up and I'm gonna disconnect it. So I'm just gonna leave this like this. Also, after this video, I'm gonna leave a link where you can download just this workflow as an example if you just wanna check it out, how I connected everything. And also there's a link where you can subscribe to my newsletter if you wanna follow my automation journey and get the latest, tips and tricks on n8n. So now, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you another thing, and that is how, for example, you can connect Elevenlabs and turn, text to voice through API. So by doing this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna learn how to set up the API call, and on top of it, we're gonna learn how to do that particular for Elevenlabs. So usually the first thing that I like to do is check for the documentation for APIs. For example, let's say this is my first time using Elevenlabs. I'm not sure how to connect it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to another tab. I'm gonna type in google.com, and over here I'm gonna type in Elevenlabs API. So you really can see that I have looked this up before, and usually the result like this is gonna mean that we know we got what we were looking for. So I'm gonna click on it. And over here, I have the documentation tab, and that's what interests me. So let's go into the documentation tab and capabilities. So I'm interested in generating, turning text to speech. So I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna scroll down and look for where the documentation is. So here it says Elevenlabs text to speech API turns text into lifelike audio. So I'm gonna click on this. And again, for every different API documentation, this is gonna be totally different. But now this is what I'm seeing. I have the documentation. For example, I see the API endpoint that I need to use, which is api.elevenlabs.io/v1/text to speech. And then it seems that I need to add voice ID. Okay, so let's start setting this HTTP request in n8n. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna write in HTTP request, like so. For the method, so let's refer back to documentation. I see that the method is post. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select post. Again, I'm gonna come back. I can see this is the URL to which I need to make the API call. So I'm gonna just click on it, and I've copied it. Then I'm gonna come back over here and paste it. Now, we have the URL, but in this case, since we're making it the request to a particular application, we can't just simply hit test step and run it, because if I do that, I'm gonna get an error because we simply couldn't find such application or whatever this endpoint leads to. So I'm gonna refer back to the documentation, and I see that there is voice ID. That means that this is a variable that we have to insert. So again, for different applications, this is going to be different, but since we're using Elevenlabs, I'm going to go into the voices because I need voice ID. And for example, I see there's area. So I'm going to just click view, and I know that in the URL over here, there is a voice ID. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this voice ID. I'm going to head back, and I'm going to replace this variable like so. So now we have the voice ID variable added, but that's not it. We have to go back into documentation and see what else do we need to send. So for example, over here, it shows what query parameters do we have to send. In the path parameters, we already added the voice ID. So for example, this thing. And then in the request, it shows which parameters are required. So in this case, for example, you can see that the only required parameter is text. But if you look on your right, you will also see this curl, basically documentation, which is presented in a curl format, and it has like an H flag, and D flag. Essentially, what these means is that H flag is for header, and this is the request body. So now we've added our first path parameter, which is voice ID. That's fine, we've configured that. But now we need to configure our headers. For that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to n8n and enable send headers. Over here, under the name, again, I'm gonna go back to the documentation and I'm copy this part, X API dash key, and paste it like so. And then I'm gonna add another parameter, which means we need one more. And this is gonna be content type. So I'm gonna copy the content type. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna paste it like so. But for content type, we actually have the value, which is application dash JSON or slash JSON. And I'm gonna paste that. Now, for the X API key, this is how the API is gonna be able to identify that we actually have access to this application. So I'm gonna go back to Elevenlabs, to my own workspace, my own account, and I'm gonna go into the API keys. And over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna simply create an API key. So create an API key, let's say it's gonna be Exalted Komodo Dragon. Let's leave it like so. I'm gonna copy to clipboard, I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna paste the value. So now we have set up the URL, if we look at the documentation, with the path parameter that we needed, voice ID. Then what we did, we've set up the headers. So we've added our API key name and value, and also content type name and value application slash JSON. Now, based on the documentation, we actually have, for the request, the only required parameter left, which is text. So to do that, let's go back into our n8n, go into and enable send body. And over here, for the body parameters, so the value or the name we have to enter is text, because this is a required parameter. So again, if you refer back to this, text is required, and this is the text that will get converted into speech. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna, let's say, hey, what is your name? And, question mark. So we've got everything as we needed. Now all we have to do is hit test step and see if this API call actually works and if we're able to generate text to speech with Elevenlabs. So I'm gonna hit test step, and it seems like it worked because I'm getting a file sent out, which I can view.
Hey, what is your name?
And as you can hear, we've basically turned our text to speech with Elevenlabs. And this is the power of HTTP requests. With key simple things, you are actually able to, turn text to speech, set up, the API keys, the connections and everything. And for example, you can imagine how some people are creating, automated YouTube videos with these sort of HTTP requests. Of course, they're making them a lot more. They're making as well videos with HTTP requests, but you can see the power of this node. So we've set up the Perplexity, and essentially, if you understood this, you can actually leave the video and you're pretty much done. You can connect to any application based on these simple principles. But I also wanted to show how you connect to a different app, which is Perplexity, because as well n8n doesn't have a direct connection to Perplexity. And this one, I'm gonna show you a simple hack, a very, very good hack, how you can quickly connect to, let's say, any API. So again, I'm gonna add HTTP request, select it like so. I'm gonna exit this out, and again, I'm gonna search for Perplexity API documentation. Here, I know that API documentation for Perplexity is under chat completions. And again, I'm presented with the documentation. So as you can see, the documentation is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Again, we have CURL or curl, and it shows, let's say, what type of request we have to make, for example, to do research with Perplexity, what headers do we have to send, and how we have to configure the JSON body in our request. But there is a very, very good hack where sometimes you don't even need to understand documentation to configure the request. So for that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I'm in the curl tab, and I'm gonna hit copy. So I've copied the curl. I'm gonna head back to n8n. I'm gonna go into the HTTP request node, and I'm gonna press import curl. Over here, all I have to do is actually paste the curl. So that's the one I copied on Perplexity, and hit import. And as you can see, all of the information in HTTP request has been pre-filled automatically by importing curl. So I have the method selected, I have the URL selected, the headers enabled, and what else? That's pretty much it. So right now, the only thing that probably we're gonna need is to update the bearer or API token, because if I hit this test step, as you can see, I'm getting an error because this is an invalid credential. And of course, you have to keep this in mind when making, imports with curl, because you will need to add your own credentials. So for that, let's head back to Perplexity. I'm gonna go into my own settings, and then let me just remember where they are stored on Perplexity, maybe under API. Yes, it seems that I'm correct. I can add API key, so I'm going to generate an API key. I'm just going to copy this real quick. I'm going to head back into n8n and going to replace this with the value. So right now I've added my own, credential API key, and now I can tell the Perplexity what I want it to research for me. So for example, we have the JSON body here, which was filled by curl, by importing the curl. And all we have to do here is change a particular role or particular variable. So here, role is system, which means this is going to be a system message for the AI. The content is going to say be precise and concise. And for role, which is user, so that means we are actually sending this message to the AI, how many stars are there in our galaxy. So we can leave this as a test message and hit test step. Okay, so now we're getting an error, validation error, search recency must be either hour, day, week, month, or year, which is search recency filter. Okay, so we actually we imported the curl, and this is very good because eventually we're gonna run into errors while trying to make HTTP requests. But there seems that value hasn't been specified for search recency filter. So over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete this what's beside, like in between the quotes. I'm just gonna enter, let's say, year. So the search recency filter, I just want to use year. I'm actually, if I want to make sure what that means, I would have to go into Perplexity documentation, scroll down, and see what search recency filter means, which is returns search results within the specified time interval, does not apply to images. Values include month, week, day, hour. Okay, so I'm included year, but as you can see, this explains clearly, what it does. But let's see if year is gonna work, because the error returned me that I can also enter a year. So I'm gonna test the step, and cool, we got the response. So if I scroll down, it even added citations, and the content, it says our galaxy, the Milky Way, is estimated to contain approximately 100 billion stars. However, recent research suggests that this number might be lower than previously thought due to new models and observations of distribution within the galaxy. So there it is. You've essentially, but if you follow this video through, you are able to configure, an HTTP request that is able to scrape site data and then summarize it with AI. You are able to generate text-to-speech with Elevenlabs and implement the HTTP request. And you as well were able to, do some research with Perplexity by configuring the Perplexity API calls. So I hope you like this video. I hope you learn how to configure HTTP requests, and this was helpful because I personally use HTTP requests all the time when building my workflows. And if you want to learn more and follow me, there's again a link down in the description where you can basically subscribe to my newsletter and get the latest tips, tricks on n8n and follow my journey. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.